a little bit too absurdly difficult. It was known as the one-word exam, and it is exactly as it says on the tin. You receive one word on a piece of paper, any word: wisdom, courage, truth, loyalty, bravery, dust, tree, maggot, Brexit, blood, I don't know, anything. And you'd have to write about this word for 3 whole hours. And ultimately, you need to show that you are a genius in these 3 hours. So you are going to draw upon a wide range of subjects. Let me give you an example. You know what? Does one of you want to just shout out a random word, not a rude word? I hasten to add. There are children on this tour, but just a random word. Brexit. All right. Okay. Well, that's a conference. Maybe, you know what? I think Brexit's a little bit too easy. Just more random than Brexit. Ground. Okay, that's quite. I could go with ground. Okay, so I mean, you could talk about the many uses of the word ground, how it is below us, how you can grind something up. It's like freshly ground coffee. Maybe talk about the history of the ground, about geography itself, about how our planet was terraformed from Pangaea, and how there was a little plot of land that used to connect what I like to call Brexit Part 1. So England and continental Europe were joined by a landmass called Doggerland in about the 8000 BC, and that was kind of swamped by the British Channel. So that's kind of how it all started, and obviously we are where we are. So that's quite a nice little link to Brexit there. Probably talk about current ecological issues involving the ground. Maybe question whether there is a ground. Are we all truly grounded? I mean, I would probably at this point have an existential crisis on paper and question my very own existence. Search the etymology of words, which meant he became, over the course of his life, very fascinated in 2 languages, Finnish and Anglo-Saxon. He became fluent in both, and actually ended up becoming a fellow at Pembroke College, where he was the head of Anglo-Saxon. Now, these 2 languages were very, very important when it came to creating the languages of the elves and the orcs in The Lord of the Rings, and of course The Hobbit, and just the whole of Middle-earth. But one particular story that I'm sure you all heard of, known as The Hobbit, was conceived in quite a bizarre way. He became a professor of English literature here at Merton College, and during the holidays he spent time marking examination papers for some of the nearby schools in and around Oxford. Now, this was a laborious task. Now, let's face it, at some point we've all had to sit exams, but trust me when I say doing an exam is pretty miserable in itself, but marking loads of examination papers one after the other is a far more laborious task. Do we have any teachers here who can back me up on this? Fantastic. So we're both in agreement. Fantastic. Okay. So, over and over again, he would be marking these papers, and eventually he comes across a paper on one very particular day, which had been left entirely blank, except for the student's name. And he was so delighted by this, he almost reached for his pen and wrote a big fat A on the front of that page, just for one less paper to mark. And just as he was sort of about to put pen to paper, he suddenly had this sentence enter his mind, and he was desperate to write it down, lest forget it. So he turned it around and wrote down the following words. Once there was a hobbit who lived in a hole in the ground. Roughly in the year 1525 by Cardinal Thomas Wolsey. Now, he wanted from the very get-go to establish Oxford's grandest college, and he got off to a really good start, establishing what was then known as Cardinal's College. And then he fell from grace. He fell out with a man who, trust me, you never want to fall out with, Henry VIII. Riots, they all began in Santander, over there. Probably should just say that used to be a pub, by the way, called the Swindlestock Tavern. Like all good stories, it all began with 2 students going into the pub, asking for a beer. And the beer was of rather low quality that they were served. So basically, the students and the landlord of the pub engaged in a huge argument over a refund. The landlord didn't want to give them back the money. Eventually, the students, in their fury, took their beer, threw it in the landlord's face, and stormed out of the pub. Now, the landlord was so furious, he ran over to the from the Swindlestock Tavern to Carfax Tower, climbed all 99 steps to the top, and rang the bell, which would ring if the council had bothered to change the clocks. Don't think they got the memo. Yeah, so it's actually quarter to 1, not 5 to 2. We have not been going for that long. Why would it be 5 to 2? I just don't understand it. What on earth? So basically, the town council here have let us down. So the bell would ring, of course, and what would happen next? Yes, all of the. Can I just get you guys to just move over this way a little bit, just to let this bus go? Super. So the bell rings. It would gather together all of the
Well, now we can't see the tower, can we? Gathers together all of the Oxford townsfolk. They gather around the landlord of this pub, and he basically says, I'm sick to death of these students. I think we should do something once and for all about them. Let's draw our swords and kill as many as we can get our hands on. And all of the town think, yeah, let's go kill some teenagers. This is a great idea. On the side of the students, the Vice Chancellor was trying to calm everybody down. Failing to do so, he ran down the road to the University Church, St Mary the Virgin, and rang the bell there to gather together all of the Oxford students. And so the students gather around him, and he basically says, look, the town are out for our blood again. I say it's time we do something about them once and for all.
I am now inside of the Divinity School within the Bodleian Library. You pay £1 to get in here for 10 minutes. So you remember that really nice looking building with somewhat of a courtyard behind the Museum of the History of Science with the gorgeous looking windows. Now I'm right behind them, inside of it. And the Gothic architecture is what takes the cake. And here are the windows. So that's the door with the book at the top of the door frame. And this is what's inside it. This is St. Mary's Church. I'm going up top to St. Mary's Church Tower. This freaking staircase was made for midgets or something. Shit, it's so tiny here. Nightmare for a claustrophobe. And it keeps spiraling up. God damn it. I smell that in the crack of my ass. Jesus. I feel sorry for bigger people that have to go through this.
It's a bit out of her way.
The courtyard of one of the colleges. This one is Wadham College. I think they're closing soon, but I'm gonna try to see if they're open. Well, Oxford, it has been fantastic. Thank you very much for the experience and the sights. I shall return to Windsor, which I will now plan my trip to France and the rest of Europe that will be happening tomorrow. I will see you back there. Bye. finally saw it. Now for the return. They're gonna come back down. My last day in England, and therefore in Europe.
Not French.
I don't know. I'm a doubtful man. I'll be back. I'll be back.
Look at that little cute bird there.
There's a little ant in my camera. Oh. Relaxing day, isn't it?
And we're gonna eat fish and chips.
Play Splendor. Not a bad way to spend my last day, right? What do you have to say to the Canadians? That's it? Well, I have something to say for the Canadians. If you haven't traveled yet, go right on ahead and travel. Find some way to find vacation and do it like me. I was terrified, I was anxious. I still am anxious and terrified. Not as much. And I can't form into words yet as to what I'll take away from this journey, but really, I mean, it is really something.
Beyond which is the parade ring of Windsor Racecourse. This course is unique. To our left, we're rounding a bend called Upper Hope, just beyond which is the parade ring of Windsor Racecourse. This course is unique in that it stands entirely on an island. It's called Ray's Island, and it's in fact the largest on the Upper Thames, being about a mile long. The only Thames island longer than this one is Canvey Island on the Thames estuary beyond London. It's also one of only 2 figure-of-8 courses in the country, the track having been laid out in this way in order to fit the required length of track into the limited space offered by the island. Also unique to Windsor Racecourse